Hello. To introduce myself, my name is Jennifer Backus. I'm the number 2 in the State Department Cyberspace and Digital Policy Bureau, and I am the moderator today. At least I will be when my mic is not cutting out. I just want to thank all of you for joining us in this session, this open forum on ransomware. I think everybody in this room is here because you recognize the incredible threat that ransomware poses to the entire world, that it's a global shared threat that we need to address. It's impacted our schools, it's impacted our hospitals, it pretty much impacts everybody around the world, our citizens, our government, and everything we're trying to do in a digitally interconnected world. For those of you who are not familiar with the Counter-Ransomware Initiative, or CRI, as we call it, it's a coalition focused on cooperating internationally to address the threat and develop policies and mechanisms that reduce the incentives of ransomware. CRI is a multi-stakeholder model, and it has a private sector component and a large and diverse group of countries involved. And so I hope that today's discussion will be an interest to many of IGF's participants. I'm so happy to have with us today 3 great panelists. First of all, Daniel Onyanyai. Oh man, I'm really going to kill your name. I'm sorry. I might let him say his own name because I think it's super rude to... Okay. But he currently serves in the Office of the National Security Advisor as the head of Incident Handling Department at Nigeria's Computer Incident Response Team, the CERT. In this role, he oversees key aspects of national cybersecurity, including vulnerability management, digital forensics, incident response, and risk mitigation. He also, to today's discussion, serves as coordinator of the diplomacy and capacity building track of the Counter-Ransomware Initiative. Niall Steinhoff, who's online, is currently serves in the Cyber Foreign Policy and Cybersecurity Coordination Division at the German Federal Foreign Office. He supports the German Cyber Ambassador, Maria Aldebar, who together with Nigeria is leading the diplomacy and capacity building track of the Counter-Ransomware Initiative. Welcome. And then also online is Elizabeth Vish, who is Senior Director of the International Cyber Engagement of the Institute for Security and Technology, which is a member of the newly launched CRI Public-Private Sector Advisory Panel. Elizabeth leads IST's work engaging international audience with recommendations from IST's work on the future of digital security and the Ransomware Task Force. She works on cybersecurity best practices, including how the public and private sector can collaborate, and how the multi-stakeholder community can offer cyber capacity building for developing countries. I also have to say, Elizabeth is a veteran of the State Department and worked in our bureau, so is an embodiment of the multi-stakeholder approach to these issues. So great to have all of you here. I have questions, which is what I think I'm supposed to do next, but if anyone has a different approach, just let me know. We're going to start with Niles. And so can you help us define ransomware a little bit more precisely? Can you give us an overview of the ransomware state of play? Over to you, Niles.
Hello and good afternoon from Berlin, Germany. Can you hear me in the room? Can somebody wave a hand or think that looks good? Great, thank you very much. So let's hope for no more kinks in the technical setup. And thank you for organizing this very important and timely session at the IGF in Riyadh. I've been asked to talk a little bit about defining ransomware and giving you a little bit of a state of play. And I would start with a very brief definition and then get into the details about actors, numbers, international peace and security, and also actions taken so far. Ransomware in generally is an act of decrypting a victim's data and holding them for ransom to unlock these data. I think this is nothing new, and that's been around for quite a while. Mostly these attacks are financially motivated by cyber criminals who follow opportunities to ransom entities, mostly in the commercial sector, and have less of a strategic outlook on who they ransom. What we see globally is that this very profitable business has specialized to become a service industry. So we speak of cybercrime as a service, where we, along the criminal supply chain, observe specialized vendors such as initial access brokers, the ransomware groups themselves who then ransom the victims for money, but also afterwards money laundering experts in the illegal sector, so to say. What we see nowadays is less so the decryption of data on a victim's system, but more the extortion to not publish the exfiltrated data, which we would call a double extortion. So instead of regaining access to your own system, which might not be super needed anymore if businesses have good business continuity plans and backups, the sensitive data within the commercial data that a company has is usually published on the internet on so-called leak sites to increase the pressure on these stakeholders. So what we also observe, at least in Germany, we have a growing concern not only about financially motivated actors, but more so about strategically motivated actors or advanced persistent threat groups who, within the context of geopolitical tension, may disguise as ransomware actors in order to conduct cyber sabotage operations that would then not be distinguishable from regular ransomware groups who may also wipe data, but this is something we have not observed yet in Germany. So this is a bit what we have. You know, we started with the simple "I lock you out of your system, pay me" type of ransomware actors, and now we went over to a highly specialized criminal ecosystem that extort companies for not publishing their data or information in the data on third parties. If you go by the numbers, ransomware is a hugely profitable economic business for these malicious actors. Last year in 2023, according to Chainalysis, a blockchain analysis company, the obtained crypto assets surpassed $1.1 billion in assets. The average ransom paid was around $620,000. But victims also, at least in Germany, we observed this, pay less ransom because their business continuity plans are becoming better and better. So from 2021, where about half of the companies paid ransom, now we have about a third, or last year we observed about a third of companies paying ransom. The majority of victims is in the commercial sector. And of course, you know, as I said, mostly these criminals are motivated by financial motives. So they go for the weakest link in the chain, so to say. But we would also say that of course, commercial impact of the ransom paid is not the actual impact when we talk about, let's say later, on the effects of international peace and security, when, for example, public utilities become victims of ransomware groups. Maybe on the groups, roughly speaking, Germany tracks 100 ransomware groups, but 5% of these groups are responsible for around 50% of all the acts. So it's a pretty, you want to say, if you speak in industries, it's a very concentrated industry overall, with the biggest players in the game currently being still, or last year before they were taken down, Lockbit, Blackbuster, and 8base. I want to also touch a bit on the broader international landscape, since this is a meeting conveyed under the auspices, so to say, or the logo of the CRI. As I said, economic damages are not just one element, you know, the damage of the ransom paid to a company. But the problem with the ransomware ecosystem is that it attacks those that are mostly more vulnerable in terms of cybersecurity. And that's often our public service providers, for example, in the healthcare sector, in the energy sector. And just to provide you an example from Germany from last year, we had a ransomware attack on a regional communal IT service provider. They were ransomed, and their services are still in recovery mode 15 months afterwards, and it affects the life of 1.7 million citizens and 20,000 public workers who cannot use their computers to provide basic services such as child support, such as unemployment benefits, which in Germany are paid at the communal level. And it shows that the societal impact and the really destabilizing effect of ransomware that it has on communities. And this has been recognized at the level of the United Nations, both within the briefing that the United Kingdom hosted at the Security Council, but also within the open-ended working group under the auspices of the First Committee, where we just passed a resolution recognizing the threat of ransomware to international peace and security. I just want to close by saying, it's not obviously only terrible. Well, it is pretty bad, but at the same time, it is not such that governments aren't doing anything against it. So the problem, of course, with cybercrime is often that you have actors who are not within your own jurisdiction, and you need cooperation between governments. And if that voluntary will to cooperate is not there, what do you do? So Germany, and I think a lot of other jurisdictions like the United States, moved from prosecuting individuals and malicious actors to disrupting ransomware groups. And not only the operational sides, but also encryption, getting the encryption and decryption keys, seizing crypto wallets, or also, as we recently did in Germany, seizing crypto asset mixers, which would launder illicitly obtained funds into legitimately looking crypto assets. I think one of the good examples was the Operation Kronos earlier in February of this year, where multiple law enforcement agencies around the world cooperated to seize assets and server infrastructure of the biggest ransomware group, Lockbit. And also, I think it led to a few arrests, if I remember correctly, in more than one country. And some people say it's playing a game of whack-a-mole, but in the end, that is not true. It is a persistent process by which those that want to address these ransomware threats slowly but steadily take out both the operational infrastructure, but also the criminal ecosystem that underpins its profitability. So I will leave it at that. Back over to Riyadh. I hope I stayed roughly within my time limit, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thanks so much for that. To Elizabeth, building on that, recognizing that ransomware is, of course, an evolving threat, what do you foresee as the possible evolutions of the threat in the coming years?
Thank you so much. And I'm happy to speak a bit about that. So the first thing I would say is that we're seeing really substantial growth in ransomware attacks in emerging markets. It used to be that originally a lot of these criminals were attacking mostly companies in the Western Europe, United States, Australia, etc. And now, over the last 2 years, we've really seen a dramatic expansion of attacks against entities and companies and nonprofits in the developing world, in economies where there aren't enough cybersecurity professionals, there aren't enough resources to defend effectively. And at the same time, the criminals are also continuing to attack entities in the developed world. So it's really a problem now for everyone in the globe. The other thing I would say is that we have also seen that the things that defend against ransomware, things like building resilience, building backups, having a reconstitution plan, the things that companies and entities can do to prepare for a cyber attack work for both ransomware and for other types of attacks. And so we would really encourage the use of cyber defenses, things like using multi-factor authentication, etc., in order to reduce the threat that ransomware poses. And then the other thing I would say is that over the next few years, we really anticipate that artificial intelligence may play a role in changing the balance between the attackers and the defenders. The tools that will be readily available to attackers could very well not just enhance their operations, but also afford them the ability to move at speeds that make it harder for defenders. So we would flag that while we haven't seen really substantial adoption of artificial intelligence by ransomware threat actors yet, we would highlight that that could certainly come. And the other thing I'd say is that for all that the threat is evolving, a lot of what we see is the same old stuff where ransomware attackers will get in through unpatched systems, through vulnerabilities that haven't been fixed, and will both encrypt the data and steal the data. And so there's a lot of really basic things that people can do to defend that that are still very effective. I'll highlight that IST published the blueprint for ransomware defense. We've published it in Portuguese, Spanish, and English, and it highlights things that small and medium-sized enterprises can do to make their surfaces less vulnerable to ransomware attacks. And we found that if those had been implemented in a few case studies, they would have prevented 80% of the ransomware attackers from succeeding. So we'd highlight that, and then we'd also say that the reality is that a lot of these criminals won't necessarily face prosecution because they are resident in jurisdictions that don't choose to prosecute cyber criminals. And so it's really important that we take a proactive self-defense posture. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. To Daniel, can you tell us more from your point of view about the CRI, what it is, why it was started, from your perspective?
Okay, thank you very much. CRI, I want to appreciate Niels and Vish for giving us a background about these ransomware actors. The CRI is a global coalition of governments and organizations, that are coming together to build collective resilience, against these threat actors. Where attackers, in a way hold systems, lock systems, and then steal critical data, and then request for ransom before they can release it. So it has become a global pandemic, and that is what necessitated the establishment of the CRI. And the CRI aims to build, a global resilience, bringing together countries, to build global resilience, and also to offer support to member countries in case they are hit by ransomware. Of course, you cannot fight these criminals in isolation, because they also have networks. Like, now the ransomware ecosystem have been formed in a way that you see we have the ransomware operators on one hand, then we have the ransomware affiliates on the other hand, and then we now have the access brokers on another hand, each of them with different responsibilities but working together and then sharing the ransom based on percentage. So it's a big organized crime. So the CRI was formed so that countries can be well prepared, build collective resilience, assist one another, and then target these threat actors and hold them responsible for their actions, and also to cut off their illicit finance, how they launder money through this cryptocurrency. So we want to be able to cut off that incentive, because the goal is just money. So if you can cut it off, you'll be able to reduce their activities to the minimum. And of course, also to bring in the private companies so that we can improve on protections also. Because the government alone cannot fight this criminal. We need the private sectors who can also, because they develop the softwares, they develop the systems. Most of these attacks, they see it more than we can see them, from the government perspective. And so the CRI wants to make sure that the private sectors are also involved. And then the other aspect is that we need to collaborate with one another to also build this resilience. Then why was this when was it launched, or how did it start? Now, after the COVID, we discovered that cyber crime, continue to increase, cyber attack continue to increase. Now you can see that because of the escalating impact of ransomware today, ransomware has increased in frequency, ransomware has increased in scope, and ransomware has also increased in severity. Before, we used to have this, it started with just a single extortion method: lock your system or lock your data, then request for ransom, you pay ransom. Of course, there is no guarantee whether you will get your information back, but that is just how it was. And then it moved to double extortion, whereby they lock up your system or your data, and then they also exfiltrate those data, and then threaten that if you don't pay the ransom, then they will release the data to the public, thereby making the victims to take immediate action. But currently, it has now moved to multiple extortion method, which even if after targeting the victim, they also move to the client or customers of the victim, to also pressure them, so that the essence is to make them to take action and to get those things. So because of this escalating impact, that was why the CRI was formed. And also, that another second reason is that the cross-border nature of cybercrime. Ransomware actors can be in any jurisdiction and be committing these crimes. And so we need international cooperation for us to be able to bring them to justice. We need international cooperation for us to cut off their source of finance. And so that is one other reason. And the other reason is that government have come to realize that there is this urgent need, for proactive solutions. You can't just sit back. You need to be proactive, before the attack. So countries need to put in place measures, to keep themselves safe, and put in place mechanisms. It could be in form of policies, in form of guidelines, but the end goal is that everybody must put in place structures to be able to withstand these people, and also to support one another. Then CRI started specifically in 2021 it was launched, and it was initiated by the United States government in 2021. If you check 2019, 2020, you will see that the number of attacks in most countries, like for example in the United States, as at 2020, 2021, the number of ransomware attacks that was recorded was over 2,000 as at that point. And so if you look across different countries, you will see so many countries recording thousands of attacks within a year. And so there was this urgent need to bring countries together so that they can discuss this the impact of ransomware. And so in 2021, over 32 governments and organizations came together, even though it was a virtual gathering, to discuss, to align their strategies, their policies, and their concerns, so that they will be able to fight, to build collective resilience against these ransomware actors. So that was how it began in 2021. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And Niels, can you share what the CRI is doing to tackle ransomware now?
Absolutely. So currently, after the last summit, which the United States hosted in Washington in early October, The CRI's members are broadly, let's say, organizing around the idea that to address ransomware, we as the states, as the members of the CRI, need to tackle the problem in a holistic way by disrupting the criminal ecosystem that really underpins the profitability of ransomware attacks. So not only address ransomware actors, but address the profitability to reduce the incentives. Right now, the CRI is organized along 4 work streams, we could say, that focus on building resilience, on cooperation, on policies, and on, as much as possible, disrupting also ransomware attacks. I want to maybe just give you a rundown of the 4 pillars, which are called the International Counter-Ransomware Task Force, the so-called policy pillar, the diplomacy and capacity building track, and the newest addition, the new work stream on public-private partnership that Daniel just mentioned, and I think Elizabeth too. To start with, Jennifer, as you said, the CRI is a multi-stakeholder, but also multi-agency model of an organization. That means if we want to address the ecosystem, we need to bring everybody in on the government side and on the company side who has the right tools to address the system. Cybersecurity agencies, it's police forces, it's those that deal with crypto assets laundering, but it's also those that deal with diplomacy and with capacity building. To give you an idea about the different work streams, maybe to start with the International Counter-Ransomware Task Force, where mostly police agencies and federal CERTs, so cyber emergency response teams, come together under the leadership of Australia and Lithuania. Over the 3 years of its existence, the so-called ICRTF, I'm not going to repeat that name all the time, has developed 2 information sharing platforms where members can share tactics, techniques, and procedures, but also indicators of compromise on ransomware attacks. And Australia has developed a website where Daniel has said, one important element is also solidarity, so members can ask for support in the event of an ongoing ransomware attack. Secondly, we have the policy pillar under the leadership of the United Kingdom and Singapore that have really worked around common challenges outside of just law enforcement that help tackle the ransomware ecosystem. Because they've been so active, I'm going to give you 3 examples, I think, that really highlight the variety of and the width, so to say, of the work of the Counter-Ransomware Initiative. France and Netherlands worked on cyber insurance, because cyber insurance is really both a tool to diversify and spread risks across the economy, but also to incentivize good behavior for companies in order to become more cyber secure and comply with basic cyber hygiene that Elizabeth outlined. Secondly, Australia released a playbook for businesses that helps them prepare for and react to and recover from ransomware attacks, that addresses small and medium-sized businesses that usually don't have their own IT department to deal with cybersecurity. And then thirdly, Albania led a project on the implementation of Rule 15 of the International Financial Action Task Force that deals with the regulation of crypto assets. So, this policy pillar shows you the width of the ecosystem that the criminals use, but we also address within the CRI. And then the last, or second to last, and then I'll stop, we have the diplomacy and capacity building pillar that Nigeria, so Daniel, and Germany, so me and my cyber ambassador, Maria Adeba, are chairing, where we try to, connect or help people find more resources on capacity building, because as you can see from the variety of topics, capacity building is not only about technical capacities for emergency responders, but it really requires a lot of entities in your government to be up to date and to be able to work together with their counterparts in different agencies. And to close with, I want to highlight Canada's work on public-private partnership, because as Daniel said, right, the software we use, the infrastructures that even our government systems run on are often maintained and updated and held cybersecure by private companies. They see something in the networks, sometimes even before we do. And therefore, having a solid foundation for public-private partnership, and IST has done some great work on these types of public-private partnerships, is absolutely key to really have this holistic view on the profitability of the cybercrime ecosystem that is ransomware today. And we hope that over the next year, we will find productive ways to advance on this public-private cooperation. And maybe one last fact, we're closing in on 70 members, and we almost doubled in size by 2 years. And I think this really, really underlines how big of an issue ransomware has become all over the world for any country, and the need for further action along these different lines of work.
Thanks. Appreciate that. So, and for you, Daniel, what do you see as the benefits of CRI to member countries?
Okay, so there are a lot of benefits, for members, just like Niels mentioned. The first is capabilities development. So the CRI is really concerned because you need to build capacities, for member countries to be able to, so that they can be able to respond, maybe identify a ransomware attack. They will be able to have the capabilities to detect, to respond, and to also disrupt the activities of these criminals. So you enjoy that. We provide capacity building through different collaborations with organizations that offer this training. Most of them are already members of the CRI. We have the Council of Europe, we have the Interpol. We have so many of them who are also willing to join, the CRI. And another benefit is that we have an enhanced information sharing platforms within the CRI. We have developed platforms like the malware information sharing platforms, which was developed by the Lithuania. And then we have another platform we call the Crystal Ball, which was developed together between UAE and Israel. So, and then Australia also developed the CRI portal. These platforms will help member countries to report incidents, seek urgent assistance. We have had instances, for example, like in Nigeria, when a private organization reported an incident, a ransomware attack to us. So immediately we escalated, and then it didn't take up to some hours, few minutes, few hours, we started getting response support from other countries. And so the platform is there. So immediately you go into the platform for urgent assistance. Every countries on that platform will be notified immediately, and then you will begin to see support from other countries. So there is nothing more reassuring than knowing that when, as a country, you are under attack, you have other backups, from other member countries who are willing to support you in conducting your investigation and ensuring that you recover from such attacks. And also on the Crystal Ball platforms and on the MIST platform, you receive threat intelligence that will enable countries to stay proactive and to glean on the experience of other countries who are going through ransomware attacks. So you also find indicators of compromise in that place for you to enrich your platforms to be able to detect the activities of these criminals. And so we also provide on those platforms, you will have access to resources. So you have access, countries share resources on that platform. that is available only to member countries. And also what CRI, another benefit you can enjoy is that CRI is committed to strengthening the capacities of the computer emergency response teams of member countries, so as to, make them to have that capacity to be able to detect these activities, conduct investigations, of ransomware activities. So there are quite a whole lot of benefits that you can enjoy by joining the CRI. This is just to mention few of them. Thank you.
For that. So, Elizabeth, as was noted, the public-private cooperation within CRI, or the pillar, the public-private cooperation has existed for a long time, but this pillar, what are your thoughts and expectations for this sort of enhanced role in CRI?
That's a really great question, and thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to the United States and to Canada for the work that Canada has done to launch the private sector advisory panel. And the team at Public Safety Canada has been working hard to get everyone who can be part of it engaged in rowing in the same direction. I'll start by saying my thoughts. My thoughts are that the private sector really does want to collaborate with mutual respect with the public sector. And IST runs the Ransomware Task Force, which is a group of more than 60 experts that come together to combat ransomware. It's a coalition led by the Institute for Security and Technology. We're a nonprofit think tank, so we can bring people together in sort of a neutral third space to talk about the ransomware threat. And we've heard a lot from our members, the members of the RTF, that they want to work with governments, and they specifically want to work with the CRI. They really think that they have a lot to offer to help combat this threat. And that includes things like threat intelligence. That also includes things like examples of successes and examples of failures from which you can learn. I always really love to highlight that there are lessons learned from failures, and if we learn those lessons, then we can avoid the failures in future. There are lots of things that the private sector could do. They have the capacity to help governments recognize threats. They have the capacity to build and improve resilience and preparation. And there are also private sector entities that are really capable of handling response when an incident or an attack occurs. I'll also highlight that the private sector owns and operates a significant portion of critical infrastructure, and critical infrastructure are the frequent targets of ransomware incidents. So it's really important that the private sector be part of the conversation when it comes to addressing threats of ransomware. So my expectations for the advisory panel or the advisory group, it's intended to bring together experts from both the public and private sectors to collaborate on cybersecurity issues related to ransomware. Its primary goal is to provide insights, recommendations, and strategies to address ransomware threats, enhance cybersecurity measures, and strengthen national and international cyber resilience. We're working on a work plan right now that will outline how the group is going to collaborate over the next year when it comes to building that collaboration between CRI members and the private sector. Our focus is really on providing advice and support to CRI members and to support the various CRI initiatives. For example, Nils mentioned efforts related to insurance and how insurance can play a role in enhancing cybersecurity preparedness. That's an area where most insurance companies are private companies. And so exchange of information and advice regarding that could be an opportunity for the CRI members to better target their engagement with insurance companies and better improve sort of the collaboration so that the insurance companies can actually play that role. There's some work that we're doing at IST, which was, again, we're sort of a nonprofit think tank that relates to the role that insurance can play in improving resilience. And so that's just one of very many examples of the ways that the private sector can contribute. And we hope that CRI members will engage in a really robust conversation with the 6 members of the private sector advisory group so that we can help address this threat which all of us face. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I know if you're involved in this, there will be robust engagement. So I have no worries on that front. So I know we have comments online, but also I want to start by, first of all, acknowledging the very full room here, which I'm very pleased to see, and to see if any of you here in the room have questions that you want to pose. I see one over there. And then I see one over there. Understood. Maybe we'll start with yours and we'll see whether we take more than one at once. So go ahead, please, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Rapid Sun from Cambodia. So first of all, thank for the moderator and panelists. And I would like to ask if Cambodia is a member of the CRI, and if it is not, what is the criteria to join the CRI? Thank you.
I think I can answer that question, but maybe somebody else wants to instead. My understanding is Cambodia is not yet a member of CRI. There is a process through which you put in an application and the CRI members consider it, but there is probably actually more to it. I don't know if Niels or if one of the people wants to elaborate a little bit more specifically on that.
I could, or Daniel, do you want to take it from the floor? Up to you.
Oh, okay. Okay, continue.
All right. Thank you for the question. The application process is relatively simple. The interested governments would write a letter of intent addressed to the co-chairs of the diplomacy and capacity building pillar, which would be Nigeria and Germany. Daniel in the room maybe could give you the contact information afterwards. And then there's a 14-day silence procedure under which members can object to the membership request. And if no objection is incurred, the country that applied for membership would become a member of the CRI. Relatively straightforward. Write a letter, wait around 14 days, and if no objection is signaled, then you would become a member.
And okay, let me add this. We have never seen countries objecting other countries, from not joining. So you don't have to be afraid of that. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think we try to recognize that this is a shared communal threat, and that the more countries that come together to battle the threat, the stronger we'll all be. And with that, sir, I think you had a question over there. Yes.
So, hi, this is Adnan Malik. I'm from Pakistan. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the insightful discussion. But I'm still having a hard time navigating, the support points. I mean, how do you guys provide supports to the member state entities? For example, if I have to give you, for instance, if you know Kaspersky, they have this initiative, No Ransom. So what they do is they normally provide the decryption keys. So they have like a list of directories. So if you got attacked, if you're an individual or maybe an entity and you got attacked by any popular ransomware, what they do is they provide you with a decryption key, since it's a very huge platform and they got a good threat intelligence teams. So I'm still trying to navigate the support. I mean, how that goes, how that work. Are you guys involving your technical teams, or is it a consultancy only? The second point is there a directory where we can find the number of companies or who are already part of the CRI? I mean, I will also love to see if my country were there. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so you can find information. We have a website, counterransomware.org, and then for the other first question, the support we offer comes from the technical teams of the member countries. For example, if you request for support, the US SAT may decide to offer that support, the Australian SAT, and that is why one of our goals is to strengthen the capabilities of the computer emergency response teams who are directly involved in responding to incidences like that. So in terms of the decryption key, first of all, when you report, if it's a known cybercrime group and the decryption key is available to any of the countries who are offering support to you, they will be able to release it to you. But if there are other things, for example, you are faced with a new ransomware group, maybe that have been in existence in another country. So they will have more experience. So, and if they have none, they can request for the indicators of compromise and some artifacts to also, you send it to them. Like the one that happened in Nigeria, what we did was that we extracted those indicators of compromise, those artifacts, and then forward it to those countries or those organizations who are offering support. For example, like the Interpol, we offered to them because none of them had the key to decrypt it, but they also have to also assist in the investigation process. So it depending on how well you want their support, whether you want to provide it to them or you want to give them a channel to provide support for you. But in any case, it is the technical agency or team of member countries that usually offer those investigative support. Thank you. I don't know if I answered the question correctly.
Do either of the people online have anything they want to add? Elizabeth Niels? Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Did you have anything you wanted to add? Yeah, okay. No.
Nothing to add.
Great. Do we have another question from the room? Okay. I saw there were comments online, but I will acknowledge that my ability to read the questions or comments is limited here in the room, but I think we might have somebody. No, it just seemed maybe that was just participants. That was exciting. Any other? Okay, I think we have like maybe 5 more minutes. Oh, there is a question. Great.
Hey, am I audible?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how effective cyber insurance is in countering ransomware attacks? Thank you very much.
Okay, how effective? Okay, what we did is cyber insurance is actually what the CRI has been pushing. We have also involved the insurance companies of members countries. We had sessions with them, and we have also come up with guidelines on how the insurance company can come in to assist countries. So when it comes to ransomware attack, so that they will be able to cover up for so many things. So we have done a lot to bring them on board. So, but it depends on how the countries, because they are also subject to your country's law. It's not like the CRI is overriding the country's law, but what we have done is to bring up, those guidelines, those guidance, and also involve them. And before the last summit, we had a session with them, and then after then there was a guideline that was produced of which countries, in collaboration with their insurance sector or the what will I call it now, the responsible agencies, the responsible insurance agency in their country, or the regulator of the insurance sector in their countries. For example, like in Nigeria, we had to, for us to endorse that guidance or that statement, we have to involve them in it, and we endorsed it. So it means that for us in Nigeria, we are going to, take up that guidelines or guidance, that is released by the CRI.
Doesn't it incentivize them to pay?
To pay.
So I'll jump.
Okay. No, Okay, to pay the ransom.
Yeah.
It's not for us in the CRI. It is a no pay. So we have a statement to that we don't encourage, and member countries should not pay ransom. And many member countries endorsed that statement. So, but as to whether your country will allow payment in some ways is dependent on your country. Even though most countries endorsed that statement of no pay, some countries did not. So it's not a binding statement, it's a non-binding statement. But most countries endorse that statement, but most countries decide to leave it open as to whether to pay or not to pay. But for us in Nigeria, we don't pay ransom and we don't encourage. So even though at the back people may decide to pay, it's left for them, but for us as a nation, it is a no pay.
Elizabeth, you wanted to add something? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. More broadly, the insurance market has the potential to play a role in increasing resilience. I would say that there's some great research that the Royal United Services Institute in the UK has done related to the role that insurance can play in reducing ransomware attacks. One role that insurance can play is helping the companies that they insure to improve their cybersecurity resilience and reduce their vulnerability to ransomware attacks. And that's not something that all insurance companies do, but it can certainly play a role. The other thing that insurance companies can do is to help companies that they insure that get attacked. They can help those companies to reconstitute their networks and get back up and running more quickly. Some insurance companies, when an attack occurs, bring on specific incident responders to help the company that was insured, that purchased the insurance, to respond more quickly. But I would just refer you to that research by Rusi. It's a really good paper looking at the role that insurance could play. Obviously, they are looking from a UK perspective, but I think that the UK perspective can be valuable for many different global operating contexts. Thanks. And then the other thing I'll highlight, which I think just Daniel did highlight as well, is the statement that was produced at the end of the last CRI summit in October that does sort of mention the best practices for response and includes that as part of a sort of overall approach to responding to an incident. It was endorsed, as mentioned, by many members and by some insurance consortiums. So I would just highlight that as a place that people can get an understanding of how to approach a response to an incident. And it offers a perspective that some insurance companies have endorsed. So those are both really good resources to go to when it comes to insurance and ransomware.
Thank you very much. There's two questions in the chat which I will launch, and I think then we are coming to the end. One is, how do you authenticate if a private organization who is developing software is legitimate? And the second question, which might be slightly easier, is how well is third world countries prepared to deal with this situation like this on their own? So I will see who wants to take one or both of those questions. Would you like to start with the second question? Anyone?
I can jump in on the second question. IST does an annual report on the ransomware threat. We're mostly looking at data from leak sites, so it's not perfect data. But I would say that overall, we've really seen the number of attacks against emerging markets in emerging markets against emerging economies in developing third world countries go up. We've seen them go up over the last 2 years that we've done this report. We've really seen the increase in attacks against especially critical infrastructure in many places. And also, sort of, to be frank, like the place where money is. So things like banking and financial institutions. We've seen attacks against government actors and government entities like pension funds. So there was a case where cyber criminals attacked the pension fund of a small Caribbean island nation. That made it hard for retirees to get their money, which is obviously a real threat to human health and well-being. And we don't see that going away anytime soon. So that's really why we are underscoring the value of collaborating between government and private sector, and also why we're underscoring the importance of preparation. We have a joke, prepare, don't pay. And we don't mean that in the you can't pay, but rather avoid paying by preparing. You won't get attacked, therefore you won't have to even think about the payment conversation if you can be well prepared. So I'll sort of highlight that as the best way. I would also highlight that when it comes to the question of on your own, I don't think that anyone should be dealing with this threat on their own. I think that the collaboration CERT to CERT, which has been highlighted here already, collaboration between national cybersecurity authorities, like in the US, we have the Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Authority. The Spanish government has INCIBE. There are many sort of national authorities that would like to collaborate with one another. I'll highlight that the State Department actually has done a fair amount of collaboration when it comes to building national CSIRT capacity, and also including in collaboration with Nigeria. And I think that that's really the future of defending against this threat, is improving partnerships and improving collaboration. The private sector really does want to contribute, want to play a role, both in investigating and disrupting these criminals, and also in preparing for and recovering from this threat. So I would also encourage national authorities and civil society in developing countries to think about how they can get collaboration, to improve collaboration with the private sector, so that no one is alone, but rather we're all addressing this threat together.
Okay, so just to add, when you join the CRI, you are no longer alone. And to deal with some of these issues, what CRI has done is to provide a kind of mentorship where another country, we mentor maybe a country who is less advanced when it comes to handling these kind of threats. So the collaboration in quote will not be that whatsoever thing you need, so you can request from your mentor they will guide you on the process to go. But the responsibility for you to authenticate a private organization still lies in your country. And then if as a country you don't have what it takes to identify that, you can seek assistance through the CRI, and those assistance can be provided to you on how to do it. I don't know if you understand that. On how to do it. It's not like the CRI will come to your country and do this authentication. But then there are guidance, there are best practices, and there are resources that can be provided for member countries, to be able to authenticate the private organization that provide those softwares. So that is why you said you are not alone. You can always seek for assistance, and you can also have access to the resources provided by the CRI. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And I wish I could give everyone another shot to say a last word, but I'm getting the wrap-up sign actually pretty insistently at this point, and the closed captioning has ended. So I think that is going to end this event. I just wanted to thank our panelists for the amazing collaboration and work, and for all of you for showing up here today. Ransomware is an incredibly challenging issue that will take all of us to continue to battle it, and just to say that there is no country that is immune, and we all need to work together. So thanks to everybody. Thank you for joining us remotely. Thank you for joining us in person. And I look forward to seeing you all around IGF. Thanks.